That is the beauty of innocence as well. Like, he's not
Yeah.
looking at animals very separately as well. There's a point in this film where he's very sad, but Jenny comes to him, and or the the way he behaves with the dog as well. He's giving to them what they want. Like, he's understanding that language of animal and human in adult sort of like the aware world of Colum or Shibon would not be there. Like, there is a certain distance which come, like, that is the tragedy of the loss of innocence. Like, it brings these now boundaries, and like sort of between little bit of mystery is lost, like, which is what I'm coming to terms with. Like, the more if you become aware about things or whatever, you put yourself on a little bit of high horse or pedestal where you lose a little bit of mystery about the universe or things and all of these things which are there. First time where you watched it, and what was your experience after you had just done watching it?
Because like I found that movie, I don't know, it's a very simple concept, like about like friends, and like someone doesn't want to be friend anymore, and that's juxtaposed with the Civil War thing. That's kind of a nice analogy sort of thing. Yeah. Also the music, it's very nice. I think it's going well with the theme. I think the whole film was about like loneliness, and like how people are like so isolated in that island that they have nothing to do, and like they find fun in like cutting their fingers and all that stuff. But that, I think that's just part of the like the emptiness that island is giving them.
Yeah, actually, that is one of the things which I was wondering as well. The isolation of modern urbanism,
Right.
versus that kind of town where everybody knows everybody, and like kind of people are aware, and then issues like this happen. And also the simplicity of it is what really kind of gets to you. Sort
Right.
of like Dominic at one point of time mentions, right? Like, what is he, like 12? He stopped talking to you. Then they kind of go about that.
My first reactions when I watched this movie were shock and disappointment, to be honest. And then I read a couple of reviews online, and they were really enlightening because they really helped me better understanding this movie, which is a very complex one, I think.
Yeah.
It is very allegoric, very metaphoric. So I appreciated this complexity, the fact that they wanted to make up a metaphor about the Irish Civil War. And so anyway, having said that, also if I have understand a little more everything they wanted to say, I can't say that I really like this movie. Too many bad emotions while watching it.
Yeah, that is actually one of the things. It is kind of the pace also gets to you, how it kind of sort of goes into the exploration of it. But you talk about the metaphor as well, right? Like, there is one point where the inspector is going to execute someone, and he's saying, I don't care who's being executed, who's killing who. It was nice when we were just killing the English. So that is one of the points in the film, when in the writing of it, he puts the metaphor really out there, in terms of how the backdrop, like how the war is not just at the backdrop, it's also like kind of into their lives. It's just like like these people of this particular village, we just see it happening at a certain distance.
My experience was, at first I was very unsure where the movie is heading, because with the whole finger cutting scene, it just grossed me out really. But by the end of it, I was so engrossed in the movie because it was just so purely simplistic that you're just watching the characters go about from one road to another, and the roads all look so similar, and the view is also so amazing. And there are a couple scenes where they hold on the animals for way too long.
I like the comedic beat with the animals in terms of how even the goats are leaving him. Like, he's looking at the goats in the point where everyone else is kind of running away from him, and he's looking towards the goats, and the goats also turn away. There's certain dry humor which is with both the actor and this director. It's been a sort of a trope.
I didn't really read about the film or hear about it before watching it. I was just like, I want to watch this because I don't know. I don't like reading about films before watching them. What happened was, I just looked at it as the film unfolded. I think I realized that it was more than just two friends deciding not to talk to each other. But my primitive brain only thought about, when my friends and I stopped talking, this is what happened. Obviously, not to an extent where fingers were cut off and stuff. But I thought of it from a very human level, from a very Gen Z perspective, where I was like, this has been happening. People are getting fed up with other people, and they're becoming more sort of upfront about it. And in some ways, this also looked like setting boundaries to me, which was obviously taken too far. The boundaries weren't respected also. Sort of, that's how I looked at it, and then when I read up on it and then connected back with the film, I realized that it was more about the war.
But no one way to skin the cat, right? Like there are multiple ways of looking at the film, and what we each take away from it is contributes to it in its own ways. But I like how the beauty of this film is it's about the breakup of a friendship, and the protagonist is the one who's being left by himself, like he's the one being dumped, and sort of he's the protagonist. Like if you look at the film also, like majorly apart from Dominic and Colin Farrell's character Patrick, everyone else has some or the other philosophy of life. These are guys who are the victims of the philosophies of life and all of that. Beautiful to look at it from that perspective also, like the breakup of a friendship, when you want to say to someone, I don't want to have you in my life. And especially when everyone else sees you as the best of friends, sometimes people grow and others like kind of there's, if you have watched Sex Education, one of the instances in that, like no spoilers, but the breakup happens between a couple is about, he says, I am flying and you are still walking, and it is like a very pure love story, but then it's still, they are like, we are not at the same pace anymore.
I was wondering where the film is taking me. Then, when he speaks to the priest in the confession room, then I realized he's going through an existential depression. His time is running out, and then he needs to do or die, and he's forsaking his dearest friend also for that.
Yeah, like it's very funny, the intersection of the state, the church with the state, like in terms of how they come into their lives and how they are also supposed to solve everyday matters. And when he goes to confess, he says, why are you not talking to him? And he says, that is not a sin, is it now?
I was brought up in a very primitive town in my initial primary years. So my father's house would be the bedhead for all the problems in the community.
Yeah.
Of in the town. But I could connect with that. Thinking, it's simple, yaar, it's easy. Hai.
Kind of makes you nostalgic about simplistic times, right? Like, which I was thinking about urban loneliness. Like in our societies, we don't even know the next door neighbor.
I had watched In Bruges just before this as a this thing was, I'd watched it, I think 10 or 11 years back. So there, that those two are hitmen, right? So there's going to be violence, there's going to be death and stuff. Here, the movie just starts very casually, very funny. Arya Rowan, that Irish accent, and constantly, everyone's saying that same thing. And then close to the 1 hour mark, I think he chops his fingers off. And then that I was absolutely not ready for. And I didn't know what direction it's going to take me. And by the end of it, I was not happy where it put me emotionally.
I'm glad you mentioned In Bruges. Like, if you watch it in the context of that writing, I think that was the first film of this filmmaker, and at least of this team kind of getting together. And so what I love that film because of, again, how it takes existentialism and philosophy and like just kind of dives into that. Like there is one simple dilemma, right? There is nothing more. Right. And something which is similar in this film also, like one dilemma, like I don't want to talk to you anymore because I don't want to waste my time like this. I am probably dying and I want to leave a mark behind. So that way, In Bruges is one of my favorite films for the way it is written, and that kind of is reflected a lot in the chemistry also of how this film comes across. Because again, on the script level, if I was reading the script of this film, on the script level, you will read it, you will be like, okay, this is how you can see what the actors contributed. Because someone like Dominic, his character was written very plainly in a certain way. What the actor has done with it and the way he has kind of played it, he's really taken it to the next level. Like, you get the heartbreak of innocence.
There's another thing that I felt a little discomfort with. It somehow bothered me that I'd never got to know how these two people were as friends. We just see them and they're not friends anymore. We see the reaction. And somehow that just, in the beginning at least, that didn't get me into the relationship of them. I was just not invested as much into the relationship. I don't know, should I save it? Why should I have to save it? Because it doesn't mean anything to me. And after a while, what I realized, of course, the film is not just about that friendship anymore. It has that allegorical thing going on, of course. But there's also another series of events that take place, including, one of the major things that I think we rushed through is the child abuse and what happens to Dominic's character. And then also there's the existential dread and basically where's the line that you draw at artist tantrum, or is it artist's existential pain, or basically is this where we draw the line of absurdity?
Yeah, actually that is one of the lens which I was trying to see the film through, was about from the perspective of gender, because it's a close-knitted society and you see the three characters, which is Dominic, Patrick and Colm, three different stages of a man. and sort of kind of trying to make sense of that world with the war going on in the allegory.
I really liked it, but at the same time, I was left with this unsettling feeling because I thought that I read online that it was a film about friendship, but when I saw it, I thought that it's more about the ending of friendship than of friendship as a. I don't know. In my mind, it was a happy film, but it's not. So I was a bit disappointed by that, but and also I read I love the setting because I read that it's shot at the Aran Island, and I went there some years ago, and when I recognized it some places, and it was. And also, I think that the setting is it really gives you this change of moods, like when the weather is foggy or cloudy. It gives you this really sad feeling. But at the same time, when the sun comes out, you're like lifted. It's really amazing. And also, I read the film as from the perspective of the characters and the friendship and the relationships between them, and also the fact I think that Calm, his behavior is he's full of contradictions, because he says that he doesn't want to talk with Colin Farrell's character because he wants to achieve something and leave a legacy, but at the same time he does the opposite because he cuts his fingers off. So I think that for me, he's apparently he's quite confrontational, and he says what he wants. But at the same time, I think that this is a sort of well-conceived passive aggression because he acts as he does because he wants that Colin Farrell's character. He knows that he's gonna be like that he's gonna talk to him again. So he wants him to speak to him. So he is gonna cut his finger off. So, and I didn't quite like that part because it's like the blame is all on Colin Farrell's character, but it's not.
That is something which I also struggle with, like his reaction of cutting his own fingers. Like that's such an extreme reaction, and sort of to put that out and all of that. But I think somewhere this film is also about like this hollow egotistical pride of men, like in terms of the war, which is also kind of is a metaphor for that only, right? People at each other for sort of penny inch of land or whatever it is. So I think sort of that is something which I struggle with as well, like why is he doing that, because it is coming in his way ultimately. But I think when I was thinking about it from Colum's perspective and like trying to make sense of it, I think he's also kind of exploring that, because there is a point where Patrick gets beaten up and he's like, he has to take him home now, and the burden is of him, and he's sort of wrestling within versus the human versus the what would be the right thing for him to do versus what he had decided for himself.
Colin Farrell's character starts off as a very happy person, like ignorance is bliss kind of a person, and then he moves on to he has a very dark trajectory. And I feel like he moves on to becoming depressed, and like I think one important part of depression is like learned helplessness. So he feels helpless initially because his best friend on the island stops talking to him, but then eventually when his sister moves out, she gets a job, I believe as a librarian, and then she asks him to go with him, but then he's so stuck in that loop where it's learned helplessness because you can't get out of it, because somewhere that loop feels like comfort to you. And I feel like that's what happens with Colin Farrell's character.
One of my favorite phrases in the film is also in the bar they tell him, you are one of life's happy ones, and Colin has always been this thinking sort of a guy. And, that kind of reflects, and his line is really heartbreaking. He says, till this point of time in life, I thought being life's one of happy one was a good thing. I didn't know it was like supposed to be such a bad thing, for me as well. And which in the opening of the film, so the opening of the film kind of starts like that only. Like the first three scenes go deeper and deeper into, the breakup of their friendship happening, like, him learning about it. And so that after the first three scenes are done, the fourth scene is about him learning it is 1st of April. And probably Colm has pulled a fool, he's pulling a prank on him. And you can see the change of energy in Colin Farrell. Like, he goes along with the prank. He's like, sort of the energy's changed, and he's like, oh, you are kind of playing me, I'll also play along with it, come on now, and all of that. But then he learns, oh, it is not that. And then he comes back, to that, like, to that journey of, something having hit you, you're realizing, oh, it's still going to stay for a little more while. And it's beautiful, sort of that way.
I read somewhere that some neurodivergent people read the Colin Farrell character as a neurodivergent character. And so most of, if you read it like that, most of his actions are like in the pattern of this behavior, like the fact that he doesn't understand this change of sudden change of mind, and so
Yeah.
it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that is one of the, sort of things in the film. Like, they're kind of living through such bleak times. Like, there is nothing to do on everyday basis also. Like, when he goes to that one lady, this shop, and the lady keeps on asking, do you have any news for me? Do you have any, like, she's hungry for some other news other than the war, which is there. But and also for these people, like, our two central characters, for them, the bonding of everyday life is not any other activity but to get at the pub and just chat, like, for all the people over there, just to talk. It's funny and heartbreaking at the same time, because, like, Colum tells him that the other day you were just talking about your donkey's shit for 2 hours, and that was the breaking point for me. That is the moment I decided I don't want to be friends with you anymore. And you can just see, it's very interesting, the choices of when the camera stays on Colin Farrell for his reaction and for how long it stays. And you can see him, sort of trying to hold on to these thin strings and saying, oh, well, okay, we'll talk about something else then, like, you don't want to talk about that, we'll talk about something else, but I want to kind of hold on to this. We are chatting, that's what we do, that's what defines our bond, and stuff like that. But that, yeah, that's an interesting way to sort of the bleakness of the circumstance, the environment that they're living in, and how sometimes a lot of human beings, like, become tragedy or become victims to their times as well.
Like the columns character, like, we get to know that he wants to be remembered once after he's dead, and that's sort of his whole goal, like what he's trying to achieve. And maybe somewhere he realized that his music isn't so good, because, like, he's quite old now, like, and he's not a good musician, maybe, and he realized that. And now he's like sort of like this whole cutting the finger and blaming it on a friend, and, like, breaking up with the friend, that's all just like a part of the play, like, so that later on, like, maybe 50 years later, like, people remember him as a guy who was a musician, but, like, his friend, like, he did that for his friendship and whatnot, that part. Because, like, that Siobhan's character, once she gets a job at the library, she decides to leave, and then she goes to the city, and then she does her job. Like, Column's character could go to the city as well, like, he could leave that place, he could, like, start a new career, he could leave Patrick, and, like, but he did not, he decided to stay there and, like, continue with his music by
Yeah.
breaking up the friendship. So I think, like, Colum wasn't a good of a musician, and he was just, like, creating all of this, like.
Yeah, at one point of time, Colin Farrell says to him, right, like, it's a shit song anyway, whichever
Yeah,
he's making.
and, like, when you hear that song, like Banshees of Inisherin, that's a fuck all song. Like, it's not like what he's playing is not good. Like, it's not like a good violin. Like, we've all heard, like, better stuff. And if he wants to be a musician so bad, like, why didn't he try when he was young? Like, why now? Like, he's only
I
in
think
his 50s, like, abuse. Like, why is he getting to realize it now? Like,
that realization can come to you at any point of, like, there's no time when you just kind of
then play the music, like, and compose the, why, like, go do all this drama of cutting the finger, I want to, like, stay away from you, I don't want to be friends with you. If he is so like so passionate about his music, why didn't he go to the city and live there? Like, because he might find more opportunities there, like, but
yeah.
more scope there. Why he, like, decided to do all this, like, with Patrick?
In fact, I was thinking about that. Can these two things coexist? Like, sort of like doing your work, great work, and still making time to, sort of do nothing, or like chit chat with people. And, like, because from Colin's perspective, what he's saying, if he's having this hours of conversation, it will take away from his music also. Like, let's leave away the fact whether it is great or not for a second outside. But, like, he's thinking, if he will spend time, like I was thinking, why can't he do both? He can still be friends, he can still spend time with them, and he can still do his music. The two can coexist, right? But, like, sometimes I can see it from the artist's perspective also. He's thinking, oh, maybe he's taking so much of my energy away into this shite of a conversation, like, that I might not be able to bring out these tunes.
And at the end, like Column's character was nowhere. Like now he has no music, and like he has lost his house, he has lost his friend. Like now his friend is actually wiser than him.
I mean, talking about the artist, I mean, talking about Colin, I mean, I really thought it was more about prestige. It was about fame that, oh God, he's done something for the love of music. He cut off his own fingers for the love of music, and he'll go down in the pages of history for that. I sort of looked at it like that, but I got in, like, I was thinking about the mental health point basically, and but I also thought how Colin Farrell's character actually deals with it, because I mean, like, I think there was a time when Shibon also very, like, vulnerably asked him, like, I feel lonely, or do you feel lonely, something like that. He just dismisses it. And you say that he's been spoken like the nice guy, he's the nice, sweet guy, he's the nice kind of people, basically. But to be very honest, this is like the kind of movie where I just like think his actions don't support that. Like throughout the movie, his actions are basically not nice. His reactions, obviously, you can obviously say that like, yeah, he's going through something. That is why. But I just thought that like Martin McDonagh in movies, usually a lot of these characters are breaking their stereotypes, including in Bruges, or like they grow more than what it was typically said. Even in Bruges, they're just normal gangsters like SE, and you find out there's so much depth to them. Similarly here, even Dominic is introduced as like the little kid who's dumb kid basically of the town, but somehow he has more depth than we thought he would, and he dies very tragically. That is one of the most painful things about this movie.
So that is one of the very striking points in the movie, when sort of it also starts with Colin introduction of his house, and him looking in the mirror. He's looking at him, and when Shibon asks him, do you feel lonely? And after he leaves and he's going to the bar and he's going to the pub, Shibon is the one looking into the mirror, and the mirror is kind of broken, and like that is what spoke very significantly to me, because I see a lot of this film for Shibon's loneliness as well. Everyone has some or the other, someone. Shibon is the one who's running away. Like she's running away even from that lady who's wanting to chat up with him. And like, obviously their parents have died like 7 years ago. Both of them are going through that trauma and all of that. But this Shibon's loneliness of all in this town is one which is, very loud, and like she makes the very significant choice of, sort of breaking free, or like making a very deterministic choice for herself. She for me is the hope for the film, or the place, or the environment, and all of that.
Shibon and maybe that the artist were basically going to the same thing, and they had a conversation about it as well, right?
Yeah.
They just acted in different manners.
Yeah. So yeah, that's actually a very good point. Like, at one point of the film where, he explains to her, he says he's not getting it, but you get it, right? She doesn't answer him because she gets it.
Yes, I was thinking about making a parallel between Shoban and Colm, because both of them have a strong relationship with art, or the one with literature and the other with music. Yeah. And, also thinking about the metaphorical meaning of the movie, I read that the fact that Colm say that he doesn't want anymore to spend time with Pedrick, because he wants to think just about his music, is a way to, is the symbol, the way in which people sometimes use high ideals, like music leaving an impact on history, to justify war. So this is a bad way to use art and culture in general to serve a bad purpose, I can say. Instead, Shoban uses art and culture, literature in the right way to free herself from this situation. The strongest moment in which they are, the director is saying this, is where in the pub, she say in the 18th century, not in the 17th century. And this stress the fact that she is the real person who embodies the power of art and culture, and not Colm.
Thank you so much, Marina. I think that is going to be my best takeaway from this film. And now every time I talk about this film, I'd not be able to talk about it without sort of talking about this, because this is so true. Like we see this in so many of our everyday, eco-social political conversations where, art or these ideals are very misappropriated. and used for all the wrong reasons and stuff like that. One of the things which I can pair with this with the other point of is the animal symbolism. Like, Shibon is the one who doesn't have, like, the primary character who doesn't have the spirit animal along with her. Like, there's this Colm has his dog, and like Colin Farrell character Patrick has his, donkey.
Jenny.
It's not a donkey, but he's calling it pony. So Jenny, yes. So there's this one scene where he's going to the bar, and Jenny and the dog are outside, and they are like they are also friends. Both the pets of these guys are friends, and they are meeting up there. And Patrick is Colin Farrell is looking at them, and he's irritated. Why these guys are still friends when we are still kind of not. So there's like, what do you guys think about the animal symbolism of this film, of why certain animals were given to sort of certain characters?
If I have to see through a symbolic lens, they gave him a dog and they gave him a mule or a donkey. It was something like that. I'm not sure what it was. Maybe they wanted Colm's character to be, like, to be portrayed as a supposedly or apparently the more intelligent one. Maybe that's why the dog, and maybe the mule or the donkey as the more dull person. Huh? I think that death was also a symbolism because the death only brought the final change in Podrick's character, right? That hit him so much that he took some drastic steps, whatever, he literally burning the house and stuff. But I think that death was also symbolism, that the innocence. I think the donkey, the mule, Jenny, it was a symbolism of innocence.
Yeah.
So with the death of that animal, the innocence which character of Colin Farrell had died.
For me, it is also a lot about that, like in terms of the Colin Farrell's character, that he has no specific philosophy in life. The real sadness of that, like his innocence with that, like, there's a story of Rabindranath Tagore called as the Postmaster, basically about the abandonment. Like, a postmaster develops a very father-daughter relationship, like with a small village girl, but then he's transferred from that place to the other place. And as he's going away, like the final beautiful writing of the final ending of the story is as he's going away, the postmaster is thinking about separation. He's thinking about how this is the way of life and all that. And Tagore writes, but the little girl had no philosophy.
Exactly.
She had no way to comprehend it, like to make sense of it. And that was her sadness with it. And I see a lot of that with, Colin Farrell has to come to terms with. He has to come to, like, the burden of understanding Colm, like why he's doing. And like all of this is now on him. Exactly. And that gets after Jenny's death, like as an audience, Jenny's death makes you really hate Colm. Like, that makes you like really, go, if he's burning his house, like, go for it. Like, kind of, it gets you in that state.
You have to think inside the metaphor, because it is this movie, in my opinion, is an allegory from the beginning to the end. It is all allegoric. In every element of this film is allegoric. Because if you think about it, like if it was a real life situation, you get crazy. It's impossible, In fact, also talking about the role of animals, they embodies the innocent victims of war. Also the fact that Colm didn't want to kill Jenny intentionally. It's very important because it's the real innocent and unexpected victim of war. One of my favorite scenes of the movie is the one in which Patrick is alone at home and all the animal enters the house, and this really embodies his loneliness and this beautiful relationship he has with his animals.
That is the beauty of innocence as well. Like, he's not looking at animals very separately as well, right? Like, there's a point in this film where he's very sad, but Jenny comes to him, and or the way he behaves with the dog as well. And he's now, he's giving to them what they want. Like, he's understanding that language of animal and human sort of, which is there, which other maybe in adult sort of like the aware world of Colm or, Shibon would not be there. Like, there is a certain distance which like, that is the tragedy of the loss of innocence, right? Like, it brings these now boundaries and like, sort of between different, like little bit of mystery is lost, like, which is what I'm coming to terms with. Like, the more if you become aware about things or whatever, you put yourself on a little bit of high horse or pedestal, where you lose a little bit of mystery about the universe or things and all of these things which are there. One of the things which I was thinking about, is it bad to be a pondering in life, like to not have any significant kind of goal or legacy, and just to kind of be one of life's happy man. Because socially, like the world which we live in makes us look down upon sort of people who don't have this kind of idea of or the lack of greater ambition.
I think it's really a capitalistic thing, because the way Parik replies, the fact that he values the friendship and talking with the calm, that's a legacy too. I think that when you do you're in your community, you make friendships, and you value relationships, that's really a good legacy. It's not a legacy as if you become famous and then everybody in the world maybe remembers you, but that's a legacy as well. The fact that people that you met find you like someone who is worth to be remembered because of your being nice, or the fact that you value your community. I think that Shoban as well, she stayed in the island as long as she values the fact that she could be like a help for her brother. But when the situation was helpless, and when she wasn't able to bring anything to the island as well, and she got the opportunity, she saved herself. But at the same time, she's not like thinking about leaving a legacy or doing something great like Calm. She's as Marina said, she's saving herself through this leaving, but it's not because she values her life and the relationships she can form. Also, she invites her brother to come with her, so it's like taking care of these relationships. And Calm as well, he's like, why can't we just talk and be friends? And I think that's a great legacy as well.
Like, you can do what you want to do, but you don't have to be an asshole about it, like Colm was being about. Like, that's where Marina's point is very important, of how he was using those ideals about sort of to justify what he was trying to doing. That is where kind of it's sort of wrong, like, because ultimately, like, if even Shibon's character was escaping from the place, like she was going away and trying to make her own thing, because she realized, like, this is that like that's the ending for me. The ending for me is the futility of war. It will kind of go on. There are some things which there is no moving on from, which he says, like, the war will go on, like maybe the civil war will end, but it will take up in some other form and all of that, as long as these sort of people who will be using higher morals or higher values for the wrong reasons.